This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Judith.
And I'm Alina. We are internet friends turned real-life friends who both experienced the tragic loss of our sons to sudden infant death syndrome in winter of 2021.
In the year after Aiden died, my husband and I both became unemployed. My parents divorced, and we had to move 5 times for various reasons.
And as for me, just a few weeks before my son Quinn died, my then husband had come out to me as a transgender woman and were subsequently divorcing.
It's been a lot.
It's been a lot.
But as long as we're living, we will love our sons deeply and work to make sure that we live a life that makes them proud.
Welcome to As Long As I'm Living podcast.
We're so glad you're here.
Okay, so here's the thing I wanted to tell you. So I have a theory. Here's my theory. There are 2 things that no one wants to listen to you about, to hear you talk about, and no one gives a shit, but you can't stop talking about it, okay? And those 2 things are when you're tired or when you're sick. I'm sick this week, and I can't stop telling people, and no one cares. My husband doesn't care. You don't care.
That was me last week. I was like, I'm sick.
And I didn't care. I know.
That's the thing.
And it was boring to hear about. It's boring to hear about sick people. We're boring population. No one gives a shit. And we can't stop talking about it. Same thing when you're tired. No one cares when you're tired. So how are you? I'm tired. Okay. You're tired. That's a boring thing to talk about. That's a boring thing to listen about.
But.
So that's my theory.
But not only is it's boring. Yes. Okay. It's boring. Nobody wants to hear it. But it's also sometimes the most salient thing I have going on. How are you? I'm tired. I'm tired.
Okay,
that's who I am.
Yes, I know that's how you are.
But
it's boring.
Can we talk? It is definitely boring. Can we talk about how? And my boyfriend is right here, and he's going to hear me say this. But whatever. Does it annoy you when other people who aren't bereaved say they're tired? Because if I say to him I'm tired, and then he's like, I'm also tired. I'm like, fuck you. You're not as tired as I am.
They're tired. And it annoys me when everyone says they're tired because I don't actually think what am I supposed to say? You're tired? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I am sorry. And I feel for you that you're tired. I'm talking about physical tired, by the way. I'm not talking about emotional tired. I was going to say,
there's multiple types of tired. There's the existential exhaustion that
I care about
bereaved.
That one. That's interesting to me when you're existentially tired. But when you're just tired because you didn't sleep, like all these new moms, right? Like you'll talk to them, how are you? I'm tired. Okay. That means you haven't a live baby. Or I don't know what to tell you. You're tired. I'm tired. We're all tired. Everyone is tired. Find me someone who feels really well rested because I don't know anyone like that. And when you do and you're like, how are you? They're like, oh, I'm great. And I don't care.
And I'm like, fuck you.
Exactly. So the point is, I was going to say is if you said, how are you? I would say I'm sick. But then I was like, don't say that because no one cares. But I am. Okay, let's put that aside. I do want to talk to you about something today. I had a really interesting topic idea come from someone in our Instagram DMs.
Ooh, tell me.
Her name, I'm not going to say her last name. Her name is Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Kim. And Kim asked, have you done anything on traveling and infant loss? I'm heading 10 hours away to a wedding and I'm terrified at my layover and I just feel so far away from my son. And I actually think since, first of all, you haven't traveled much, but you are going on a trip. This is your first trip. And I travel a lot. I was thinking that we could talk a little bit about traveling after loss, because I do think it's an interesting topic.
I think it's a really interesting topic. I actually already have thoughts on this. This was a surprise topic. We just decided to record today, and Judith was like, I have an idea. And so this is my first time hearing about it, but I think this is a really good topic. I have a lot to say about it already.
I have a lot to say about it too. So why don't we start by saying, like, what did your travel look like before you lost Quinn? I actually don't know. You don't seem like the type of person who travels.
I'm not.
For fun.
Correct. I'm not somebody, if you had asked me, like, do you like to travel? I would have said no. That said, I do like once a year I would go on a big vacation. Like, I've been to many places, but I always, always, always am thrilled to come home. Like, I like the adventure of being away, but I always wish my vacations were 1 to 2 days shorter, because I just like being at home. Always. I always have. You do not relate.
I don't relate at all. And I actually, but you know, in my house growing up, my dad didn't like to travel. And I didn't, the whole family loves to travel, except maybe my brother. I don't know what my brother likes, but the whole family loves to travel. And it was just I remember being very confused. Like, why is he so stressed? Why do you care? He's like, I don't like going on a plane. Like, who cares? You're on a plane, you know? But hearing you say this helps me really understand my father in a new light. Like, that there are genuinely people out there that don't like to travel. I didn't know that was an option growing up. I didn't know it was possible that you could be someone who liked to travel or didn't like to travel.
Well, and let me say this. It's not necessarily that I have to be at home. Like, I have always liked my vacations. I've had good experiences. I like trying new things. I like going to new places. I like trying new food. I love all of that. It's not so much that I don't like the travel. It's that I like my home so much.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's okay. So beforehand, let's say you would travel once a year.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm sick. Not that you care. Yeah. So you travel once a year, and what kind of traveling did you do? Did you go, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So I would typically, obviously before the pandemic and before Quinn died, I was married. So we would do typically one vacation with her family and one vacation with my family. So we may 1 year go to Italy with my family, and we would tack on
what about traveling just the two of you? Or what about you traveling by yourself? No, not a thing.
Oh, I've never traveled by myself.
Oh.
Never. But let me also say, a lot of this is because I did not have enough vacation time. So my family really wanted us to go on a vacation with them, and her family really wanted us to go on a vacation with them. And I would only have 2 or 3 weeks of vacation a year. So I would use up a week for travel with my family, a week for travel with her family, and then a week for taking off at Christmas time. And I will say, I felt that squeeze. I felt the squeeze of wanting to do more things, wanting to travel as a couple, but not having the available vacation time.
Yeah.
And I've always been somebody who, when I get home from vacation, I need to rest. So I would always want to have a day at home after whatever. I'm a homebody, I guess is the way.
Yeah.
But, I've gone on international trips. We went to the Netherlands with my family, and then we tacked on a trip to Switzerland, me and Kaylee, and we would go with her family. We'll do in California. We'll go.
And what did
LA,
your vacations look like?
We would do a lot of nothing. I'm a big fan of nothing vacations. I know. So my favorite type of vacation is to go somewhere gorgeous and then just do go to a coffee shop this morning and then read a book by the beach all afternoon and then go to maybe the next town over for 2 more days and sit by the pool and read a book and get coffee shop and eat delicious food and delicious croissants and cappuccinos and sit and read a book. That's what I want to do on vacation.
Explain how I feel in my heart. It's very.
Tell me.
It's my heart is pounding. I'm even starting to get a little teary eyed. I just feel my anxiety rose 45 points just hearing you describe that.
Tell us about how you travel. I want the listeners to hear about a Judith
I want everybody to know that compared to my mom thinks the way I travel is the way I think you travel. She's like, Judith, you do nothing. You want to relax. And I travel. First of all, I have to say that I travel for work. Before COVID, I traveled once a month. Okay. So I was traveling, and I traveled to the 5 major cities in the United States. So New York, DC, San Francisco, LA, and Chicago. Those were my territories. And I traveled once a month. So I was traveling already, let's say 10 to 12 times a year for work. And then, of course, my family lived in Los Angeles and my sister lived in New Jersey and my husband's family lived in Canada. So we were constantly traveling to family like that. And then before we had kids, we always tried to do one vacation a year for the two of us. So I would say I traveled a shit ton. Mm-hmm. And I think I became an expert traveler. Like I'm the type of person that had like all the TSA pre-check. I had like a whole system for what I would wear and what I would pack. And I never checked luggage. I would never do such a criminal thing. One time we went to Africa and I refused to bring anything other than a carry-on. Like that's just, you know, and then once I got there, even one day, I want to tell you guys about myself. One time I had the opportunity to go to Denver for work. And I decided that I was going to tack on an extra day to my work vacation and I wanted to go skiing. And so I woke up in St. Louis at like 4 a.m. I got on a plane. I was on a plane at 6. I landed in Denver at 7:30 and I was on the slopes by 9:30. And then I skied all day by myself, I rented a car. I got skis. I was skiing by myself. Then in the afternoon, then I got tired. So then in the afternoon, I went down to Denver and I explored the whole city. And then I woke up the next morning and I had to work all day. And that's just how, like, I feel like I definitely was like a busy traveler when I'm on vacation now, even now, like we have like a few activities every day, you know, like I try my best to plan like preset things, like probably like 3 preset things and then like 3 casual things and then coffee every morning. My point is I'm a little extra. And when I travel, I want to see everything. I want to do everything. And then one day I want to sit by the pool, but I want to experience everything.
Yeah.
And
so for me, it's the opposite. For me, I want to spend most of my time relaxing and doing nothing. And then I'm like, if I'm away for 10 days, I want to spend 3 or 4 days seeing sights and doing activities. And the rest of the time I want to be doing nothing in a beautiful spot.
I think it's beautiful. There's so many different types of people in the world.
Exactly.
And I would say, so first of all, there was COVID first. So like, obviously no one was traveling for a long time, but when Aiden died, my entire world changed for so many reasons, but definitely when it came to travel, everything changed. And I feel like it's important to explain why that is. And I know you haven't, well, I'll just tell this other story is that after Alina and I became really good friends and we met, I went to Boston like a couple of weeks later to meet her. And then like a month later, I was like, hey, when are you going to come out to LA? And she kind of didn't book anything. And then she was like, I'm going to book it next week. I'm going to book it next week. I'm going to book it next week. And eventually I was like, Alina, do you not want to come? Like, my feelings weren't hurt, but I certainly was confused because we had kind of said like, I was going to go there. You're going to come here. And you're like, I just can't. The idea of traveling right now makes me feel really anxious. And so that was unusual to me, but I really did understand it. And the reason why I'm saying all this is because travel after loss is overwhelming in a new way. I think, first of all, you lose a lot of executive function and all of those things like planning where to go in the morning, waking up in the morning on time, showing up at a specific spot at a specific time in a specific city that may not be comfortable for you. You may not be spending a lot of time in that place is really challenging. And I think I just didn't have the confidence in myself to show up. And there's all these subtle rules to traveling that no one, that you don't even think about, but are there. For example, when you're sitting next to someone on the plane, it's like polite to say hello. And then that's the end of the conversation. To start sobbing while you're sitting next to someone mid-flight, honestly, it's like a faux pas, like you're sharing space. You're sharing space. It's frowned upon. You're sharing space with these people, so you have to be like respectful. I think another thing is that when you're grieving, you want to live in a very controlled environment because you want to limit the triggers. When you're traveling, there are a million pregnant people and there are a million babies, and you're trapped.
There's a baby crying on the plane, and I've always been somebody who is not bothered by babies crying on planes, but now, oh my God, I'm bothered by babies crying.
You can't leave.
It's triggering. And you
cannot leave.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing. Like, you can't leave. Like, you can't just get up and leave in the middle of the flight. So like you're expected to sit in one place. I think like other things, like, I'll never forget this. Like I'll talk about the first experience I had traveling after loss, but I think one time, I don't remember where I was coming or going, but I didn't know that you had to like pay for carry-on luggage. And I got to the line and they're like, you have to pay for that. And I was so flustered. Like, I couldn't figure out how to get from like I broke a rule, which obviously doesn't even matter, to like, now I have to pay for it. Like in my head, it felt so personal, even though like that's just the rule. I remember just being like, I'm drowning right now. And you want me to think about paying for, I thought I was doing everything right.
Yeah.
And that is something that I don't think you can understand unless you have lost someone and you're in severe crisis.
Yeah. When you're like in that type of brain deficit where you can't even like haul your ass to your own doctor's appointment that you have every week at the same time, and you can't even figure out how to hit that on time. Like the idea of like showing up, how long is it going to take me to get to the airport depending on the traffic, like blah 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 blah. Like I mean, it's a lot.
No, 100%. And then once you get there, now okay, let's say you found a place to stay. Well, what are you going to do? Like you don't want to do really anything. It doesn't, you know, when I think you lose your sense of taste, but you kind of lose your sense of taste for everything.
Right.
And
it's
like
not just your
nothing
tongue taste. It's
good.
like your, exactly.
Nothing
you're just,
feels
your
good.
tastes change for everything.
So you can go, but then what are you going to do? It's not like, the only way I can describe it is like sitting down to eat and seeing on your plate like 5 different tastes and textures of green mush. It's like you can have like,
like there's Legos on one plate and then there's also dirt on another plate.
Yes.
Like, okay, I definitely don't want to eat the dirt, but then you're like, do I want to eat the Legos?
Nothing,
not really.
Right. Nothing feels good. Nothing seems good. Nothing is good.
Even at what did I say I like to do on vacation? Sit and read, right? In a beautiful place. I literally could not read for an entire year after Quinn died. I would look at a book and my brain would turn to mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
So if I can't even do that one activity that I like to do on vacation, like why bother paying money to go somewhere?
100%. 100%. And I also feel like the first trip I went to after Aiden died was I went to go to my brother's wedding. Ooh. And I think it's also like this is a whole other side of it, which is that I had to pack clothes. Like I hadn't eaten in 2 months. None of my clothes, the last clothes I'd been wearing were maternity clothes. None of my clothes fit me. It's like anything that is out of just the norm of barely existing is hard. And now we're putting on complicated layers of thinking ahead. That's just impossible. I want to address exactly what Kim said, which is that I feel so far away from my son. Like that was the first time that I had left Aiden, you know, I mean, I left him at the grave, but I still felt very much so like a mother leaving my child was wrong. You know, it felt weird to be so far away from him.
Well, the first time that I slept, so Aiden is buried. He's buried in LA.
Yeah.
So the first time you traveled, you were leaving where he was buried. And Quinn is cremated, so he lives in an urn in my house. Yeah. And the first time that I slept away from my house after he died in January, and the first time was at Easter. We went to my in-laws, and I brought his urn with me because I couldn't, the idea of leaving him behind was not possible.
Mm-hmm. I brought his clothes.
Wrong.
Yeah. I brought some of his clothes and a picture.
And that was just a weekend trip. And it was, you know, it was hard. It was really hard. But then the first full actual vacation was, again, with my in-laws. We went to a beach town that we've been to many, many other years in the past for a full week. And I packed a bag for Quinn. I literally packed a bag. I went to CVS and I purchased baby sunscreen.
Oh my God, Alina.
And I packed his towel. I packed his little bathing suit because the thing is, this trip had been planned while he was alive. So like and at his only Christmas, he was given gifts of things that were going to be his size for the time of this trip. Yeah. And so I packed them and I brought them. He had his own, I packed his diaper bag and I literally packed him a bag for this trip. Yeah. And it was like, honestly, I felt absolutely batshit crazy. And you know, I didn't like acknowledge this with anybody in my in-laws except Kaylee. And I did have like, this is 4th of July happened during that week. And I did bring his 4th of July onesie. And, you know, I showed them that I had brought that. But like, I don't think they knew. Maybe they knew. I don't remember. I literally, I felt like a crazy person. Why did I buy baby sunscreen? It just felt important. Like I felt like I needed to make sure that he was in the car with me. Like I wanted to just like connect to the Alina who would have had him with her on this trip. Like this was very much a family trip that he would have been on. This was not like a couple's trip that we would have left him at home for. Like, he would have been a very important part of this trip, and just like fucking broke my heart that he wasn't there. It was so hard. I think that was the hardest one.
Well, when I went for my brother's wedding, we had bought a ticket, and it said on the ticket like infant lap seat. And I just remember like sitting there and like the whole time I was like, what should have been, thinking like, what should have been, what could have been. I was like holding on to this ticket that said lap seat for like dear life. And I just remember like part of me wanting to like rip it up and get a new ticket, you know, and part of me like loving that it was there because it meant at one point I did believe he would be there. The second time that I went away was a couple weeks later. My husband and I went to Hawaii because my sister was having a baby. And I didn't want to be in the entire continent. I don't want to be like on the continent that she was on while she was having a baby. And I do think there is something therapeutic about travel after loss. When we went to Hawaii, we had no plans. We just showed up. Like I said, it was impossible for me to plan anything. I didn't book any of the places to stay. I asked other people to book everything for me. I literally just showed up. And I don't even remember much of what we did. I remember like that my husband was working. And so I went hiking. I don't even know what I did, but I remember thinking to myself, you know, for the first time, I looked a little bit alive. And I do think that there's something that can feel good about being in a different space that he wasn't supposed to exist in.
Right.
It's like if you're going on a trip that he was supposed to exist in, or I imagined, it hurts so much. But there was a therapeutic side of travel, which is he was never supposed to be here. And it is better. Like it is a better trip because he's not here. Not actually that, but you know, like this is never a trip he would have been on. It's like if you're going wine tasting, like there's like, there is something I would say, like if you're struggling and you can't breathe after loss and you just feel like you need a mental break, there are places and things to do and places to go that can feel better. And those places would be places that you would never really want to bring a kid to anyway.
Right. And no one else is going to have babies.
And no one else is going to have a kid.
It could look like if you had them with you.
Yeah. The first, I'm trying to remember if that was a trip, but I think it was the first time, and we've spoken about this before, but the first time that I really had a good like laugh and I felt grateful to be alive after Aiden died was on that trip to Hawaii. I went surfing alone because my husband had to work and I'll do everything alone. I don't care. My husband had to, and I got this like Airbnb experience, and this guy he was like a beast of a man. He taught me how to surf. And I remember just lying on that surfboard, staring at the sun. And I just felt in my heart, grateful to be alive. And you would never bring a baby on a surfboard. And so I found that to be like, it just felt like there was a side, like, okay, you see your child everywhere after loss. And that's one thing, a blessing, but also it's something you're bearing. It's a weight to bear. This seeing an imaginary person, constantly inserting an imaginary person into every single scenario. And to be in a scenario that person would never be is a relief.
Yes, I totally get that. And you know what? Another facet of travel that I think I enjoy more since the loss is I really like long car trips by myself. So like I've taken a couple of trips. Like I went to visit my friend Julia in Vermont by myself, like a couple months after Quinn died. I have driven, where else? Oh, I've gone out to Empty Arms, which is the organization that I go to their support groups. They're in Western Mass. So it's about 3 hours, 2.5 hours one way. So it's 5 hours total in a day, but I'll drive out there. And to me, it's like, those times in the car, I can listen to music, like, and now I'm more able to feel that sense of calm and like whatever in my everyday life. But in the early days, like those drives actually like gave me moments where, because I was concentrating on driving, but I would have music on, it was like I could think. It was almost how I feel during EMDR, where it's like I'm focusing on something else. So the grief was like less on the forefront and it was more a hum in the background of my brain, but I was still processing and feeling and thinking, but it was less like overwhelming because I was also doing something else at the same time. And I also have always liked just like blasting music in the car. And so, I mean, so this trip I'm traveling this weekend with my boyfriend, we're going to Canada, and like, I'm looking forward to the 6-hour drive. Like, I think it's going to be fun.
I agree. We also learned how to travel. I mean, that was during the pandemic. I actually always think of Aiden when I get into doing road trips, because we drove from St. Louis to Maryland, like to Baltimore, Maryland, like the coast, not like actual Baltimore, when I was pregnant with him. And I was so sick on the way there. And then we drove from St. Louis to Los Angeles when I was like 9 months pregnant with him. So pretty much like I drove across the entire United States of America while I was pregnant. And every time I get in the car, I kind of just think of him a little bit. Like when I'm getting in, like we kind of, neither of those trips I could read because I was so nauseous. And so, I just, it makes me think of him, and I remember him, on those trips. But I think there's something to be said about how difficult travel can be, how triggering travel can be, and how it's a reminder of how incapable you are. Yeah. And I think there's something to be said about how there's value in escapism.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And if you're with a partner, which I was not, but if you're grieving with a partner, like maybe getting out of your house could be helpful. Like I think that's been true for you and your husband, right? Like you've been able to connect and feel like you're looking at each other instead of past each other when you're away.
Yeah. I mean, my husband and I, when we went to Hawaii that trip, but that was the first trip. We also went to Seattle a few months later. And there's something very, like when you lose a child, I think there's something where you become very attached to your partner in some ways in those immediate aftermath, because you have no one else. You're kind of like holding on for dear life. And it's the only other person that kind of can understand this crazy new world that you're living in and trying to understand in itself. And I felt on both of those trips so vulnerable, and I felt closer to my husband because I felt so vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like there was something about how none of us, we don't know what we're going to do in Seattle. We didn't know what we were going to do when we landed in Hawaii. I was so incapable, but I was being incapable with someone else that felt like really bonding. It's kind of like a team exercise. You're so fucked up. You're so fucked up. And, you know, and then they're like, learn how to make a fire. And you're like, I can't collect wood. And if the person's like, I don't know how to make a fire. And you're like, okay, well, I guess we'll just sit here being cold. Like, it kind of feels like that in a different way. Like, I feel like when we were at home, we were both kind of surviving in our own, you know, bubble, just trying to like get through. And I feel like when we were both of those trips that I look back on, there was something that was really like, we were really locked in. And here's another thing. On one hand, you lose your executive function. So the trips like aren't as good trips. But on the other hand, like
your standards are so much lower.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like I was, if I didn't see everything, I actually feel like I've walked away with that scale. If I don't see anything, I don't care. Like if I don't see everything now, I don't care in the way that I once did. I think I travel more like you now than I did before. I just want to say one other thing to respond to Kim's comment about feeling so alone. When I was leaving for my brother's wedding, I spoke to my therapist and I was telling her how I was like, I can't leave him. He's a baby. He needs me. And she told me, she's like, Judith, I'm going to watch him for you this weekend. I'm going to watch over him. I'm going to take care of him. He's not going to be alone because I'm going to hold him in my heart. And she actually did text me throughout that weekend. And she said, like, I'm watching him. I'm here for him. He's close to me. I feel him.
Oh my God.
I know. And that was something, I mean, we all love Dr. Denise Mendel. We all love Dr. Denise. And now she's going back to Dr. Denise, not Dr. Mendel. But we all love Dr. Denise. But that's a person who gets it.
Yes.
That's a person who gets it. It's not logical that you're leaving your child behind. It doesn't make any logical sense. Obviously, it's okay. But there's something inherent about a connection between a mother, like a parent's obligation to their child to protect them and to keep them safe and to keep them close. And I don't think it makes any logical sense, but I think it makes emotional sense.
It makes perfect emotional sense.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the last piece of this puzzle, which is coming back from vacation. It is always hard to come back from vacation. I mean, I'm somebody who would be excited to come home. But that said, the couple of times I've come back from vacation since Quinn died, and I'm actually dreading this for this weekend because this still is pretty much just as acute as it was before. I come home. I'm so excited to be in my home. I'm so excited to see and snuggle my cats. the homesickness melts away. And then I remember that the one person that I'm the most homesick for, my son, will never be there. And I remember coming home from that first weekend away and just walking in the door and collapsing because the relief of being home was so overwhelming, but the grief that he was never going to be there was also like so much more overwhelming. And I think that can be hard too. Grief does feel a lot like homesickness. And so when you get that beautiful, wonderful sensation, relief of being home, it also was like it was crashing down on me, just all that I was missing as well. And that is a tough part of travel for me now.
Oh, that's such a good point. What other gems do you have in there?
That's it.
I also want to say that there's a picture that's in my suitcase that I travel with of Aiden. And it's actually like a thank you note. Mm-hmm. You know which one I'm talking about. Like it's a picture of him on front. It's like a baby and it's thank you note. And when I was with Alina this past summer, like I guess I for the first time read the thank you note. And it says something like, "Dear whoever, thank you so much for the books and the clothes. Aiden can't wait to wear them. He's gonna look so cute when you see him at whatever it was, Hanukkah." Well, I think I said when we bring him to Ottawa, like that's where my husband's from. "We can't wait to show you how cute he is. Love, Judith." And I've got this, and like the first time I read it, it's heartbreaking. And like every time I read it, it's heartbreaking. And now I'm like very sentimentally attached that that's the one that comes with me. Like that's the picture that lives in my suitcase. That's the thank you note because I think it encapsulates the joy of having him, you know, and like it's like a little snapshot. And
it was like a draft, right? You had, I think, on the back. I remember seeing it. You had like scribbled because you like messed it up, so you like made a new one. But so this is like the draft of a thank you note.
The draft of a thank you note, and that's the one. And you know what else? I also brought with me a lot. I still have it in there. It's like this little finger puppet chicken. It was important to me when I was thinking about what to bring of his. It was like, okay, well, what's something that I can bring that's easily hideable or like small? You know, it can't be like a big thing. It can't be a heavy thing. It can't be something that's too valuable because I might lose it because you never know with travel. So, and you never know with me. And so it was like, I had to find the perfect like travel safety blanket teddy bear. It's not so clear cut.
I actually love that as a conversation starter. We should ask our Instagram stories. But to me, I bring one of Quinn's birth cloths everywhere in my purse, and I always pack one when I'm traveling. And the reason for that is there's two reasons. One, it makes you feel close to him because I always would have birth cloths if I was bringing a baby with me. And then two, I cry unexpectedly all the time.
Yeah.
It's so much nicer to cry and blow your nose into a birth cloth.
I agree.
But the other suggestion I have is a pacifier. So obviously Quinn had 50 zillion pacifiers in his life. So I have 15 pacifiers. And so throwing one of those in my purse or in my suitcase is doesn't make me nervous I'm going to lose it because I have 10 zillion. But it definitely it literally was in his mouth. Like how special and meaningful that can come with me anywhere I go. I actually have one of Aiden's pacifiers.
Yeah?
Yeah. It was in a bag that you gave me or you brought with you, meet you here. And you were like, oh, this is Aiden. Oh, yeah, you brought it with you when you came here because you packed in Aiden's diaper bag. And so you had it. Oh, yeah. And then you said, let me put this with Quinn. And so the little pacifier is sitting next to Quinn's little stack.
Oh, my God, that's the cutest thing.
Yeah. So
I love that. Yeah, that was an accident that I brought that because I don't have a backpack. I don't know where my backpack is. And so I've been packing in Aiden's, his diaper bag. But I actually remember when I went on this grief retreat after Aiden died, I went on this grief retreat and it was interesting because a lot of us had these little things that when we went, we all seemed kind of normal. And then bedtime would come and you'd look around the room. There were 3 rooms and this one person was cuddling with a plastic bag with her kids' pajamas. I had this little duck. We all kind of started taking out these safety blanket items as if it's a normal thing to do. And, all these grown women were cuddling with things, you know? Yeah, which is sweet to think about. But I remember just thinking to myself, oh, that's interesting. We all do it. We all have this
if I can say one thing, that is normal, right? I think all bereaved parents, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same type of thing, like a pacifier or a bag of clothes, but I do think we all have little something or other that just really reminds us and
that we bring with us and we carry around.
And you know what? I think that's healthy.
Because I have that in my house. I even have it. Okay, I have it in my house. I have it in my purse, like at home. I have in my purse, I carry things that belong to him. It's kind of like he's just everywhere with me. And the idea that I was going to leave him, not only leave him physically in his grave, but also like just leave at home. Like, his picture is everywhere at home. His things are everywhere at home, integrated into my life. And it's just important to me that no matter where I go, I see him, I feel him. And so if that means I have to bring a picture and a finger puppet, like I bring a picture and a finger puppet. And I try my best to remember that everyone has shtick. Everyone has shit. Everyone, everybody has things about themselves that from the outside you wouldn't expect. And if my worst thing is that I carry a duck with me when I travel, like, who cares? And honestly, now, if I were to go on a work trip and like share a room with someone, I would say like, yeah, this is my duck. I actually think it's a chicken, but whatever. It's weird the first time you do it, but after that, it becomes very normal.
Yeah. I think I have a lot. I can't wait to hear what our listeners have to say about this. So make sure you follow us on Instagram this week because we'll ask some questions in our stories about this because I think this is a really interesting topic.
I do too. So thank you, Kim, for asking a question. If there's something that you wanted to share, Kim, now that you're at your trip or maybe you're back from your trip, just DM us and I'm curious about how it went.
And you know what, guys? If you ever have an idea for an episode, you can DM us that too.
You can DM us.
We would love to ramble about any topic of your choice.
Yes. Oh my
Seriously.
goodness.
Send us an email at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com or send us a DM on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast.
And Alina, I will see you in a couple of hours.
Yes, you will. We have another recording, an interview coming up. Very fun interview. All right. Love you. Bye.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow. Yay!